Some stories begin with chaos. This one began with silence. Deep in the Appalachian backwoods, nestled between forgotten roads and misty hills, stood Raven's Edge Farm. To outsiders, it was just another piece of land run by a quiet black woman who kept to herself. No visitors, no drama, no noise. Just fields, fences, and a house that looked like it hadn't seen action in decades. But silence can be deceiving, because this farm, this woman, was not what she seemed. Beneath that calm exterior lay a storm forged in the fires of battle. She wasn't hiding, she was waiting, and when danger finally came knocking, they didn't just find a woman. They found a war, and by the end they would realize what her silence truly meant. Exactly what Keynote 1 hinted from the start. This wasn't just a farm, it was a fortress, and she was its commander. The silent queen of Raven's Edge, tucked between mist, draped hills and thick, whispering woods, lay a stretch of land known only to locals as Raven's Edge. The gravel road that led there was so narrow, GPS often gave up halfway. At the end of it stood a modest farmhouse, wrapped in silence and mystery. No music, no barking dogs, no signs of children. Just the slow hum of wind and the soft rustle of leaves. People said a woman lived there, a black woman, middle-aged, alone. They called her Miss Lena. She bred horses, grew vegetables, and came to town once a month for supplies. Never smiled, never lingered. Some thought she was running from something, others said she was grieving, but the truth was far more layered. What no one saw behind those weather-beaten walls and calm, dark eyes was a fire that never died. A life most couldn't imagine, a woman who had once walked through war zones with nothing but grit, steel, and a loaded rifle. The ghost in Camo, Delta Force's quiet legend Lena Brooks, was a name whispered in military halls with a rare mix of reverence and caution. A Delta Force commander, one of the best, she had spent 2 decades executing missions most of the world would never hear about. Her file was thick with black tout lines, sealed operations, and commendations hidden from public eyes. She had led teams into burning villages in Kandahar, hunted warlords in the Congo, and dismantled human trafficking rings across Eastern Europe. But after one final mission, too classified to even hint at, she vanished from active duty. The government said she retired. Her teammates knew better. She'd seen enough, lost enough, and needed silence more than glory. So she bought a farm, changed her number, and let the world forget her. But Lena didn't forget the world. She trained daily, maintained her weapons, wired her home like a forward ops post. Because a soldier like her, she knew peace was only ever temporary, and some battles always find you again. Predators in the fog, they came like shadows in the mist. 6 men, armed, hungry, and arrogant. Word had traveled through some backwoods channel. A woman lived alone on acres of untouched land, no neighbors for miles, no visible security. The leader, Tanner, a scarred ex-con with a grudge against authority, saw it as easy money, soft target. He called her, the others, drifters, ex-militia washouts, and drug-thirsty cowards, followed eagerly, their minds filled with greed and violence. They saw Lena's farm as a score, equipment, horses, maybe even cash, a remote farmhouse, just a helpless woman, nothing more than a rural fairytale waiting to be plundered. What they didn't know, what none of them even thought to question, was why no one ever bothered her. Why no one dared venture past her gates. They were so focused on what they could take. They never asked who they were stealing from. Eyes in the trees, traps in the grass from the moment the raiders crossed onto her land. They were being watched, not by neighbors or police, but by small, silent eyes hidden in trees. Motion, sensor cameras rigged to alert her via a secure network. What looked like birdhouses and fence posts were, in truth, high-grade surveillance devices, the kind used on covert missions overseas. Lena had spent years turning her farm into a fortress disguised as farmland, pressure plates beneath key entry paths, tripwires along the eastern fence. Even the wind chimes were motion-triggered decoys. As the men crept closer, whispering and laughing, Lena watched from her concealed basement ops room, calm and unblinking. Facial recognition software tagged their faces. One had a federal warrant, another was tied to a local break-in last month. These weren't just thieves. They were wolves thinking they'd found a wounded deer, but they had wandered into a battlefield they didn't understand, and Lena, she was already 10 moves ahead. The night they moved, the moon hung low, shrouded in drifting clouds, casting an eerie glow over Raven's Edge. At precisely 2:17 a.m., the 2 old Chevy trucks rolled silently down the gravel path, headlights off, engines hushed. Inside, the 6 men checked their weapons, masks ready, adrenaline building. They moved with the arrogance of predators, splitting into 2 teams. 2 peeled off toward the barn, the rest stalked toward the house like shadows. With a swift kick, the back door splintered open. "She's not even up." One muttered with a smirk, but the air inside felt wrong. Too quiet, too. Watching, the farmhouse was dark, but unnaturally clean, too orderly. No signs of panic. No one screamed. No sound of footsteps upstairs. Then came the creak. A deliberate weighted sound, followed by the sudden clack of locks engaging behind them. They turned, but the door was gone. Sealed shut by steel that hadn't been visible seconds ago, it hit them too late. This wasn't a home, it was a trap. Trapped in a hunter's web the moment the last man crossed the threshold, Lena triggered the sequence. Metal slabs slid down silently over windows and doors, locking the intruders inside like rats in a maze. The temperature dropped slightly. Another psychological touch she designed. Panic crept in. What the hell is this? One of them barked, yanking at a window that wouldn't budge. Hidden speakers crackled to life. Then her voice, calm, unhurried, deadly, "Welcome to Raven's Edge." The men scattered, yelling to regroup, their bravado dissolving with every passing second. Lights flickered as Lena activated decoys, triggering motion sensors that redirected them into trap. Strip wires, strobe bursts, chemical markers invisible to the eye. From her command station beneath the barn, she watched their every move, mapping heat signatures, logging panic reactions. They hadn't just walked into the wrong house. They had entered the domain of a tactician, a predator trained to out. Think terrorists, and Lena, she was enjoying the game. Silent justice in the barn while chaos unraveled inside the house. The barn stood still beneath a veil of moonlight. 2 of the raiders crept through its open doors, flashlights cutting narrow beams across bales of hay and saddle racks. "She's got horses, maybe some gear worth selling," one whispered. But above them, nestled in the rafters like a ghost, Lena waited. Face streaked in camo, rifle steady, breath calm. She didn't hesitate. A flashbang dropped silently between them and detonated with a thunderous crack. The 2 men dropped, clutching ears, vision scrambled. Lena descended from above like a shadow given form. In less than 10 seconds, they were disarmed, zip-tied, and sedated. One tried to mutter something, "Help," but her boot pressed gently against his chest. "Help," she said coolly. "You came here to hurt someone. You're lucky I'm in a forgiving mood." She dragged their bodies into a storage stall, sealed the door, and vanished into the dark. 2 down, 4 to go. Precision, surveillance, and a woman in command inside the house. The remaining 4 men stumbled blindly through the halls. Desperate, confused, disoriented. Every corner turned brought more fear, lights flickering with no source, vents releasing timed puffs of chilling air, footsteps that weren't there. Lena controlled it all from her underground command room, surrounded by monitors and thermal scans. Her fingers moved swiftly across the console, adjusting audio lures and decoy noises to herd them like cattle. "She's not human," one of them screamed. On one screen, she watched as another slipped on a hidden oil patch and fell hard, weapons skidding across the floor. She didn't celebrate. This wasn't revenge, it was strategy. One by one, she picked them apart. Through false exits, sudden bursts of light, and tactical timing, she isolated them. Each takedown was swift. A dart here, a nerve strike there. When the last one dropped, she stood at the top of the staircase, face unreadable, heart steady. This wasn't just survival, it was dominance, executed with surgical precision. The fall of Tanner revelation in uniform. Tanner had always believed strength came from fear. Make people afraid and you win. But fear now clutched him, tightening with every breath. Separated from his crew, bruised and disoriented, he stumbled into the master bedroom, hoping for a way out. What he found instead made his blood run cold. The walls were covered in framed medals, plaques, and photographs. In one picture, Lena stood in full Delta Force combat gear, flanked by elite operatives, a steely gaze in her eyes. Below it hung the Distinguished Service Cross. He backed away, stammering, "No way." But it was true. The woman he mocked, the easy target, was a decorated war commander. A moment later, the floor creaked behind him. He spun around, too late. Lena emerged from the shadows in full tactical gear, her sidearm pointed low but steady. "You thought I was prey," she said softly, "but I've spent my life hunting men like you." The dawn after the storm by 4:12 a.m., flashing red lights painted the treetops. DHS agents moved in swiftly, alerted by Lena's encrypted signal hours earlier. Outside, they found the captured men bound, sedated, and tagged with handwritten notes. Names, offenses, threat levels. One agent stood, stunned. She did all this alone. Lena stepped out from the barn's side door, calm as sunrise, her vest slung over her shoulder. "They picked the wrong address," she said plainly. As the men were hauled into transport vans, Tanner passed her, head hung low. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Lena turned and walked back to her porch, coffee brewing inside. The land around her, once silent and sleeping, now buzzed with energy, but Lena felt peace, because this was her edge of the world. And if trouble ever came knocking again, it now knew exactly who waited behind the door. As the sun rose behind the hills, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold, Lena Brooks stood at her porch, coffee in hand, expression calm. The intruders were gone, hauled off by federal agents who could hardly believe the tactical brilliance they had just witnessed. Raven's Edge, once considered just another forgotten farm, had reminded the world of what true strength looked like. Lena didn't speak much. She never had to. Her actions echoed louder than gunfire and carried the weight of every mission she had ever led. She wasn't out for revenge. She didn't need praise. All she wanted was peace. But if war ever came again, if any fool ever mistook her for weak, she would remind them, peace is not the absence of power, it's the presence of someone strong enough to protect it, and at Raven's Edge, peace would always be guarded by the silent, watchful eyes of a Delta Force legend.